How many times do you get somebody like that coming to visit you on a Saturday with ways to be able to hear you and you're not talking to her? How many times do you get somebody like that coming to visit you on a Saturday with ways to be able to hear you and you're not talking to her?
Hello there. I was just listening to that too. So I am so glad you're here tonight. I am Kat Hobson. I am your host. I am thrilled to be here tonight. You are listening to Paranormal Experience with Kat Hobson, and I have one of my favorite people joining me tonight. I know I say that a lot, but seriously, this really is. Christopher DeCesare, is someone who went through just a bodacious time in high school. He was a track star. He was having, the best time. And all of a sudden, there were, breaks hit because he had a haunting in his dorm. And he became known when he wasn't public with us as the ghost boy of Geneseo. And his parents got involved, his friends got involved, the Warrens were involved at one point. There was havoc, there was mayhem, there was all kinds of stuff going on, and he survived that. And it wasn't easy, I don't think. But I'm going to bring him on because you've got to see this guy. So, hello, Chris.
Hi, nice to be here, Kat.
It's nice to have you here. We were talking before the show. We did this the first time in 2015 when your first book came out.
It's a long time ago.
That's so much fun, though, because we've actually gotten to spend time together. And have you eaten sushi since then?
I've eaten sushi once in my life, and that was with you and our friend Michael Lewis back when I came through going down to Florida. And you were the only person to ever get me to eat it, and I actually enjoyed it, and none since. So yes, you are the one.
Well, I just didn't know if you had developed a taste for it after that and, just went wild with it, or what the scenario was with you on that.
No, I just never been exposed to it, and you had said you would have to try it, and I was a little nervous. My thought was perhaps it's raw seafood, which probably it is. And then I ate it. It was incredible. But then I thought, well, you're not around, so I don't want to risk it. You know where good stuff is. I don't. So that's the last time. So probably have it again when I see you.
Well, the next time that you head down to Florida, you just come on back through here.
Yes, it'll be my treat this time. That's right.
Yeah, we've got people already coming in and saying hi. And, Vera, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that. But is it Devera, or you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong? And Lori Dorsey is my best girlfriend that's working very hard on a condo that she just bought. And she has been painting and painting and painting and painting some more. So now she is just absolutely exhausted. She went to the beach to get some sunshine and away from all that. And she is listening. So
Mr. Vera actually is Vince. Mr. Vera, he actually is the chief photographer for my latest book. All the landscaping photography and things like that. It's out in California. Very nice person.
How cool is that? It's nice to meet you, Vera. And I'm sorry I didn't know how to say your name, but it's very pretty. So I am just, I am so blown away by the life that this has taken on. Yeah. And, I know that when you experienced this haunting initially, it was very frightening to you. Yeah. I mean, we joked at one point about it's a good thing that you were in track because you were always running. And it was frightening. It was horrifying.
Yeah, there was no context, which I know how to view it from. Unlike today, where we have many podcasts, television shows, movies even, there really wasn't much out about the paranormal back then, unless it was something very scary, And so this was kind of, as you would know, more of the occult back then in the 80s and 90s. And so we didn't necessarily know where to turn, what to do, where to go. And I didn't even know if what I was experiencing at first was reality. I thought perhaps someone had put drugs in my food, or maybe there was
Right. I remember that.
a gas leak in the room. Perhaps it was a practical joke. Maybe it was SAD. Perhaps it was hallucinations or mass hysteria. As a distance runner, you have to work through various hurdles in a race, especially if it's 42 kilometers, 26 miles, and you have to control your environment. And I thought to myself, I don't understand what's happening. How can I even function in that environment? And luckily, because I had some good friends around me and some resources that we use and approached, including Father Charles Manning from the church, and then
Mhm.
Dr. Lawrence Kessler from the college, professor of psychology, we began to get a feel of what might be happening and perhaps how to approach it, handle it, and maybe even survive it.
You know, I know that there was the point where there was the injury in the shower.
Yeah.
How long did it take for it to escalate to that point?
About a month. Well, I'm estimating, as in most things, you don't know what's happening till it happens. There might have been things occurring of this nature before I actually realized what was going on. But the first thing I recall specifically that I could say this is paranormal was what they call now a disembodied voice. And that was on
Mhm.
February the 11th of 1985. And the shower attack was almost actually 30 days to the day, March 11th, a month after everything began. That was followed immediately after the blessing. The priest had come to
Yes.
bless the room, and it seemed to have worked. There were no more shadows, no more whispering voices, no more cold breezes, no more flashing clocks. But it seemed as though the spirit was upset at being pushed out, and it then began to go to my friends' rooms and where they lived and attack them. And that brought me to him because they'd say, "Chris, help me." And so I really couldn't escape from its presence.
Yeah. You know, when it first started, because I mean, I'm sorry, this haunting fascinates me because it's so much more than people even make up,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, you couldn't, if this hadn't happened, I don't know that you would be able to write something that had
No,
all of these elements in it. I mean, it
no.
covers so much.
Yeah, well, trauma changes not just your experience, but how you view life. You think
Yeah.
differently. Sometimes there's a lot of PTSD that occurs, from severe moments, and that's because you want to survive. And sometimes that fear of not surviving can overshadow your logical mind. It can. And I'll give you an example. It has now been 41 years and 2 weeks since that thing came into my college room uninvited. And when that was when that came to a conclusion after a few months, it's been kind of calm since then. But even though I should say to myself, that's ancient history, don't worry about that, I still fear every single night. I wonder if tonight's the night because it happened once before without my willingness or expectation. So therefore, it can then logically happen again. So to this day, after 4 decades, I still wonder, will something like that ever happen again? And I hope that it doesn't. So when you're writing fiction, when you're trying to create some kind of cool entertainment experience, you don't think that way. In fact, you embrace things happening because there's more to write about. When you
Mhm.
undergo trauma, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's drug addiction,
Yeah.
whether it's poverty, loss of something you love, you don't ever forget that even when you survive it, and you really try hard to avoid that happening a second time.
What do you do to try to avoid it?
Well, that's a good question. I try not to notice things that might seem potentially of paranormal. And this is so strange. Here I am. I'm the ghost boy, right? I'm on Netflix. I'm all over all these, and I don't like even experiencing anything of a paranormal nature because my experience was so horrifying, so all encompassing that we were hurt. People were hurt, physically hurt. That I don't like
Yes.
to engage in those things. Although I do recognize that my experience allows me to potentially help people in a similar circumstance. So unless I feel I can help directly, I just stay out of those things. I don't watch the movies. I don't watch the TV shows ever. I don't think I've ever seen great shows. Ghost GHI might have seen one time. I've never seen Ghost Adventures. I don't watch the shows because it reminds me of what happened to me, and also because sometimes I wonder about the veracity of what they're doing. Sometimes having been both in front of the camera and then in experiences, you begin to see some of what goes on in some of the productions. And I remember talking to a few people who are very big in the field of the paranormal entertainment, and they admit, a lot of times they're forced to create experiences. They're forced to have something happen because the show has sponsors. The show has a set amount of resources. If nothing happens, then they have no show. So they'll kick the wall on purpose and react to it a second time. And a lot of it stays. A lot of it is pre-planned or written. However, there are times, they told me, where things do happen. They're frustrated because they have to move on to another place. They really can't investigate like they want to, but they feel that by doing these shows, even if they're mostly entertainment, they can highlight historical sites, events, and people, share terminology that's used in the field, maybe some equipment they can use, maybe normalize it as a process of life as opposed to some strange occult thing. So even though they do admit that most of it is not real per se, they do feel there's a reason to have it happen, and people do seem to enjoy them.
Well, I think that I would agree with that, because I know some of the people that do those shows too, and I've actually been on one, which was such a trip for me, because I was like, oh well, look,
here I am.
And it was terrible, but it was awful. But the whole point of the that enterprise is viewership. Viewership sells ads.
Yes.
Ads sell soap. You got to have soap. But that's why they called them soap operas. Did you know that?
I believe that.
But,
that makes sense to me.
So, when you were going through that, there was nothing funny about that to you.
No.
And I mean, at all. And
you mentioned, Kat, the shower attack. I just real quick, I want to share that, if you don't mind, with your listeners.
No, I don't mind a bit. We got 2 hours. You say what you want.
Got it. Cool. So I didn't know that could happen. I had the first month I'd experienced the thing looking at me very close to my face. That was startling. I recognized that these things could drain energy from locations, so that my clocks would flash, get very cold feeling in the room. You might yourself lose some body heat. I recognized that. I knew that they could, by that point in time, state things, whisper things. There was an aspect of communication that was possible. I had no pre-concept of an attack, something that was brutal, where it would actually pierce your skin and threaten your life. So I think that when it first happened, the attack, I was probably in shock. This happened right after the priest had blessed the room. The following day, I ran a mile race. We had a collegiate Olympic ceremony there. I ran the mile, and I was worried about winning it because I hadn't been running well, and I surprisingly I won it. And then I went for a nice, easy 9-mile cool down through the fields and roads of Geneseo. And that's why I went past that tree that's referenced a lot of times in the TV shows for the torture tree, not knowing what it was back then. And I came back, and I'm, of course, you're sweaty, you're hot, and then you take a shower to clean yourself up. And I'm in the shower, and I notice it gets very dark inside the bathroom. I thought, why is it dark in here? And I looked up, and I could see above me the silhouette of the ghost. And I knew it was the ghost because the way the head tilted, as it always did. It was a telltale sign of what this was. I thought, wait a second. I must just be seeing things, because the priest had blessed the room. It should be gone by now. I didn't understand how things might work otherwise. And so I ran out to the middle of the bathroom floor, just make sure that no one's in there. And I said, well, you know what? Must be the ghost then. I'll just turn the water off in the shower so there's no flooding in the bathroom. Then I'll just head out and round 2 with the priest, right? And so I go into the shower, and as I'm turning the water off with the lever, there's like a lever, as I turn it off, it feels as though I'm struck forcefully with a knife in the back of my spine. And I use that knife analogy specifically because if you've ever been making salad or cutting up vegetables or things, and you ever slice your finger with a knife, it's a clean cut. At first, you don't feel it. It's just like, but in a few seconds, here comes the sharp pain, right?
It doesn't take long. Yeah.
For these things, but in the cold water, right? So because it didn't feel like a sharp pain, I knew that must have been like a sharp object. And the impact of that knife in my back pushed me into the wall. I hit my face against the tile wall in the bathroom. I remember I could taste the bitter cleanser, the soap, talking about soaps, right? That they used to clean the bathroom wall with. I thought, oh my gosh, don't break my teeth out, please. Now, of course, in the movies, the girl always falls down and says, help me. No. I always told myself that you don't start a fight, you finish it. So someone's attacking me, I'm going to fight raw morphin. So I turned blindly and I just swung out to hit whoever's there, a good punch to the face. And then I was young and strong and healthy back then, so it'd have been a fierce punch, a haymaker, and I smashed out through the shower curtain. The shower curtain fell down a little around me, and then when it settled by the floor, I looked, and there was nobody there, but I could see in the mirrors, which are above the two sinks where you brush your teeth and brush your hair. I see my back. What the? And I can see my back there was no knife there. There were these 3 scratches of uneven length. And it should have been like 5 if it's a hand, right? Or 1 if it's a knife, but there were 3. I thought, that's weird. And they're already bleeding. And I remember I remember telling myself, I felt bad for that kid because I just recognized in that moment, he's in trouble. It was like out of body experience. And either because of the cold or the shock of what's happening or the pain of what was going on with my back, I fell to my knees and I screamed, who are you? What are you? Show yourself, you coward. And there was no answer, just the dripping of the shower head where the water's still slowly dripping out. And I fell onto the bathroom floor. If you think about it, it's disgusting. It's a dirty, wet boys' bathroom floor. It's probably the worst place you ever fall, but
not where I would want to lay down. But,
but I didn't care. I had to collapse.
Well, at that point, you have to get some respite.
I had to study myself, right? And I said to myself, this is bad. I think I'm dying. And my mother had given up everything to have me. She was going to college and had a bright future. And, when a woman went to college back in the 60s, it was very unusual. It was a nice opportunity. And to have me, she gave all it up. And I thought, this is horrible. Here I am. I'm a teenager. She did everything to have me and raise me. I'm going to die on the floor at 18 in college where she should have been. And I thought it was a horrible fate for her. So I told myself, don't make a face. Just calm your expression down so that when she sees you in the casket, she won't be alarmed. She'll feel that you had some sort of peace if you just, see you rather than being horrified even further by expression of horror on my face. So I just kind of calmed my face down and my eyes caught hold of one thing. There was a droplet, a small bead of water, pear-shaped, on my wrist from when I was in the shower. And in that shimmering bead, I could see the room was upside down. And I thought, whoa, that's cool. It's science because water refracts, it deflects, changes light. That's cool. And then it dropped down.
You're thinking well.
Yeah, that's perfect. But then it fell. I was sad, and I said, wait a second. If the water falls, that means gravity's working because gravity pulls at 9.8 feet per second. So okay, I've got refraction, I've got gravity. So I put my gaze down right by my face in front of me on the tile floor, and the grout between the tiles was darkened from the drop of water. I thought, okay, it's moisture. So I knew in that very strange moment, very quiet, strange, meaningless moment, I realized that I'm not going crazy, that these things are actually happening and science works. So what is this? I didn't know how to connect my reality with what's supposed to be happening in reality. And I thought, I just can't keep doing this. I can't every day wonder if I'm going crazy. I'll put my mind back together every single day. And maybe a pretty good teacher because now when I work with someone who has dyslexia, for example, it's like, oh, they're not trying. They're just lazy. They're stupid. No, they see the alphabet different than we see it and the construction is different, but they're as smart as you are. And I realized in that moment, wow, people have different lenses in this same experience. We have to be careful to judge and rather it's better to understand. So I'm ready just to go to sleep. I don't want to die, but I don't have to live. Then I hear the door open up to the bathroom and the warm, dry air comes over my heels, up my legs and up my back. And I hear somebody in the room with their feet, and then I'm being picked up. I hear someone saying to me, "Are you okay? What happened, Chris? You're bleeding." And then I kind of get my bearing a little bit, and I see Jeff's face, and "You're okay?" And I just can barely speak. I'm like, He put a towel around me. He dragged me into his room, C2D2, and then Ed is in there, and Beth and Linda, everyone is in there. Like, oh my God, look at your back. What happened? And it was pure chaos. And they really wanted to bring me to the hospital. I was sincere about that I was bleeding so badly, and I said, I'm not going to go. I'll fight you all. And that was the thing, like on television, those interventions they call them, where there's one guy in the middle and then the family who loves them so much trying to save them from their own mind. And I realized that moment thinking, oh my God, it's an intervention and I'm the guy. And I always like people on the outside to help.
It is a different kind of intervention, right?
Yeah,
This
but I was
is
like,
a
how did I get here? How did I get that? How am I? The guy in the middle has to go someplace. So I thought, okay, think quickly because I can't lose control of the moment. If they bring me to the hospital, they'll sedate me. They might feel I'm self-harming. They might try to, secure me so I can't move good, and the ghost will find me. I can't have that happen. So how do I have our worlds match? So I thought, okay, my lens is stay here. So I said, wait. I said, get peroxide, get some cotton swabs, get some bandages. And so for 47 minutes, I'll never forget the time, it was peroxide and cotton swab on the wound and
oh,
bandage.
sure, yeah.
And so my whole back was lined with like a whole strip of these bandages. And I learned quickly that you really can't wear a shirt. And it happens, they tear off and it rips and it hurts. So I sat in my room
Yes.
for 3 days with no shirt on, just kind of shivering in the cold rather than go to the hospital. Before they put those bandages on my back, Jeff had said, the natural light's fading out the window. He looked out of his window up to the campus. He goes, if you want a picture, that's how to get the picture of your back. This is fascinating evidence. And I already had gone through the trauma of having the ghost picture out there with the skeleton and my hands out. There's always rumors going who I am. And it became this big circus thing. And I just wanted a friend. I needed a friend. And I said to him, I said, Jeff, if you're my friend, don't take that picture. You won't do it. He said, but I want to, and I explained to him, please, I want to be Chris, not the ghost boy, please.
Yeah.
If you're my friend, put it down. And he did. And so that's why there's no photograph of the scratches. People say, where are the photograph then? I didn't want them, Kat.
Well, and he's still your friend.
Yeah, forever.
And that same level of friend.
That's the best thing. So I just, it just highlights the fact we weren't investigating, although some that did happen in the experience, we're surviving.
I was just curious because how old were you? 17?
I was 18.
Went?
Yeah.
18? And that just had to be, I remember my son when he was 18.
Yeah.
Right. And he was pretty much, he was big, monstrous. He's like 6'2", 6'3". And, it's, he would not have dealt with that well either. And I don't know that he would have dealt with that as well as you did, because even though I used to razz you about how fast you could run when, because you were always running out of the room when the ghost showed up. And you put that in your book. That's not a secret.
No, not a secret.
But, it's so interesting to me because there's so much going on, especially in an athlete, because you are having to maintain. Yeah. But in a male body at that age, there's so many transitions happening. And so the stress of the injury, the stress of the fear factor of the actual, there's somebody in my room and there's nobody here, what never ceases to, and we have a question I'm going to ask you in just a minute.
Sure.
But what never fails to amaze me is that y'all, from the get-go, from the moment that y'all recognized what was happening to you, and it was focused on you.
Yes.
Just you, for the most part.
Singularly, until the blessing, yes.
Yeah, but that to me, when we first spoke, and I'm like, how was that just you? Because you had a roommate.
Yep. You
had friends on the floor. You had male and female. It was a co-ed area.
Yes.
And you were the one that it wanted, whether it was just to talk to you or to, it was definitely getting your attention. And I don't even know what that, I do know because you've told me, so, I do understand how that felt to be singled out by a ghost and by a spirit that was in pain from all of the people there, how you were the one that was going to make them better.
I didn't want people to find anything out. I didn't know how to deal with myself. So before, the whole dirty laundry phrase, dirty laundry. I didn't know how to handle it. So until I did, I wanted to keep it a secret. So I told Paul, my roommate, the second day of the haunting, not the first day. I don't want to in any way influence him. I didn't know what the cause was. And when he, though, saw the thing by the loft with the head rising up, and I see it. That's brilliantly depicted in episode 1 of the Netflix show. Then I realized, okay, if he's seeing it, not knowing what I'd seen, then it's not internal, it's external. So at first I was relieved, yes, I'm not crazy. And then I thought, oh, there's a dead thing in the room. It's probably worse. So Paul and I knew. And then I let Jeff know that strange things are happening. And Jeff was an English major. He loved writing. He loved photography. He loved music. He loved art. He was like a young Renaissance man, just if you such as your movie.
He's still a Renaissance man.
He really was. I can imagine him with a skull.
Married a Renaissance woman too.
Yes. And he began to, such a writer, began to record what I was seeing and as like a journal. And that's what we used to check with and say, okay, were there patterns? Did it occur the same time every night? Was it different days of the week? Did the weather impact things? We ate. We're trying to look for variables that would help us understand and maybe even control what was going on. In my suite, there was myself and Paul and Craig was there for a while, and Ed and Jeff and Brian and Luke, lots of us. And then there were 4 quads. So you had about 30 people at all times running through. I didn't want people to find that out. I wanted to have a normal life. I wanted to be Chris, who's the runner, Chris, who was happy, go lucky, and just likes being around people, not some kind of gargoyle that, is dealing with these strange voices. And so my primary focus wasn't thinking about why I'm being targeted. It was, how do I make it stop? And then once I make it stop, I won't care who's targeted. It won't happen anymore. I'll just end the whole process. I think it's because of being in a cross-country team, it's always about the team effort. So I was fortunate. I didn't always dwell upon, woe was me, woe was me. It wasn't until the shower attack when I was, smashed to the ground bleeding that I thought, wow, this sucks. I don't want to hear this thing ever again. And that's the fact. But unfortunately, and this is just normal human behavior, when you get a photograph that's something amazing, you want to share it. And if someone says to you, Kat, guess what? Guess she's pregnant. It's not exciting. Don't tell you, but I won't. Be you're so happy to say, guess what? Don't say anything, but this person's pregnant. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that, or they're getting married. It's human nature to just kind of share
telegraph.
Yeah,
telephone.
Right. And so I wasn't surprised that once Jeff showed the picture of this ghost skeleton picture, that he would start to span to the campus. That's what became known as the Ghost Boy. And it's one of those things. I hated it because it wasn't me. But over the years, I've grown accustomed to it because people understand me through that label.
Well, and, I really think that the fact that you wrote the book, the first time I read it, I was really filled with empathy, but that's what I do. And I feel people's experiences. Right. And when I was reading that, I was like, oh, this is, and especially when, and I know we'll get to it when your dad came.
Yeah.
What a blessing to have that dad, but I am just so fascinated. Now, when we were talking about the shows, okay, and we both know that ghosts do not work on a schedule.
They do not.
And they don't hear what
it's their own schedule, apparently.
Huh?
It's their own schedule, not ours.
Right. So they don't they don't care how much money you've got tied up in the lighting for this shot and blah blah blah. But although they have gotten much better at shooting on the run now than they were initially when the show started.
Yes.
But the equipment's better. But when you were talking about, sometimes there is a need to get something and go on. And Jan in chat wanted to know, does that frustrate you, being someone who has experienced a real thing and you would like to see the real, nothing but real stuff? How does that make you feel?
I think I'm split on that. I think in an ideal world, which we're just not going to have right now, everything that was filmed would be authentic. I think that'd be a great service to everyone. However, we don't live that ideal world, and sometimes you have to compromise to get things done how Congress should work. And so I recognize, even though about 40% of what people see on TV is scripted or not real per se. A lot of it is real, and people who do these shows
Yes.
do believe in what they're doing, and they really try hard to present evidence as best they can, given the circumstances of trying to film and whatnot. The Netflix show is in production for over 4 years. It took 4 years for them to create that hour and 40 minutes that people will
Yeah.
now see. So it's a lot of work, a lot of hands, and even our experience. It's a funny story. Getting to answer Jan's question, kind of around about fashion. I was first contacted about perhaps doing this docu-series for Netflix over 4 years ago. There's an email from a company, All Three Media, Raw Studios in London, UK. And I thought, this is a scam. So I delete, put trash bin. Then I get a second one and I think, boy, they're persistent. I'll tell you that. So I'll just trash. So
They're
then
efficient scammers, right?
yes, I was at an event and I happened to see John Zaffis, the Haunted Collector. I've known him for a number of years. He's always been very kind to me. I said, you know what? He'll know. So I approached John. I said, John, these people, he goes, oh, they're great. That's a big company. They did race for the White House and Vatican Girl and Gold Rush. They're good. I'm like, oh, so I had to go back in my trash bin and find the deleted items.
You had trashed them?
Yeah, I trashed them. I thought,
oh, you're funny.
Like they were still there, and they said, "Oh, thank you for reaching. We didn't know how to get a hold of you. We're getting nervous, but And what happened was Netflix, James Wan, we didn't know the name at the time. He did like The Conjuring and Aquaman things. He felt that the horror movies and the horrors I was getting just too silly. People would laugh at the movies like Terrifier 62, things like that. People just laugh. And he said he felt there's actually real experiences that are sincere that affect people's lives. And rather than just have people run over with the cameras and see nothing, or having people cut in 9 pieces by some creature, he wanted to have it where we can actually have a docu-series where it tries to recreate an actual experience that they know that something happened. With multiple witnesses, the place exists, historical connection. And so this company in UK was tasked with, out of like 450 cases, they had about 8 months to do this, try to find 3 or 4 cases they felt they could say, something really happened. Now, what does that mean? And so luckily, unfortunately, they chose the experience that I had with Jeff and Linda and Beth and Craig and everyone. And so we began talking, and we interviewed probably via Zoom meetings, probably 8, 9, 10, 12 times. And after a period of time, they had what they needed to present their package, their promo, their results to, I don't know the terminology in TV talk, but anyway, they gave the information to Netflix. Netflix is out of LA. They have commissioners, they're called commissioners. And the commissioners, there's one in charge of humor and horror things. And the initial reaction that was given to our concept of making this a docuseries was, we were, one word, and I quote, dusty. We're dusty. And so I thought, what? And the rationale was that, we were a bunch of old white people from 40 years ago, and they're really trying to focus on inclusion and DEI and alternate lifestyles and things. We didn't quite match what their goal was. And,
Right.
I said to the folks, they believe this, once they hear what we went through, once they see who we are, how we react, they'll like it. And sure enough, once they actually got some of the footage shared with them, beyond concept, they thought, this is incredible. This is great. The friendships, the experience. And so I was very thankful that in my own silly way, I was able to break through another lens, which might have been exclusionary for whatever reason, and I was very proud of that, because
You
at
should
least
be.
for me, I don't want anyone being judged by how they look or how they speak or where they came from. I think that content of your character, like MLK said, is the key, and we were successful in that. So anyway, so that's what happened. But even in the process, I must have spent 85 hours with them sharing my experience. It still all goes to Hollywood. It all goes to scriptwriters. And then when it's time to film the interviews and do the things, there's a script. And that the people, the directors, executive producers, everybody there, kind of people, have to follow the script for every single thing. And I had a hard time with that. The very first day of the interview of filming, I was livid. The questions they were asking, where they were going with this, because I want to be polite, right? Because my friends are all there, they're spending millions of dollars for this. And people said, this is great, go on Netflix, this is great for your brand, it's amazing. And I said, yeah, but I went home, I went back to the hotel that night thinking, this sucks. That's not who we are. It's not who I am. This is not right. I can't do this anymore. And so next day they picked me up in the car and they brought me to the studio. And I said, listen, I'm not happy. Whoever wrote this did a terrible job. Not only was there in the car, of course, right? I said, they picked all the one-offs. That's not the right. And so it became a bit of a heated discussion, but we were arguing back and forth. And so the gentleman who's in charge of all this, his name is Mark Lewis. He's won BAFTA awards. He did great things. He's a very famous executive producer. He goes, "What's the problem?" I said, "I am the problem." And so, so let's talk about stuff. I'm not doing it in public. Let's go in a private room and discuss these things, not in front of the camera, people, and the gaffer and light person. So, we went to a quiet place and I discussed what my things were. And so we made a compromise. I said, if you don't fix this, the train leaves Rochester at 11 o'clock, Amtrak, I'm on the train, I'm going home, I'll get my ticket, done. Of course, they can risk that. They already filmed Jeff and everybody else, so I had them where I wanted them, and I knew that. So this allowed me to negotiate. And so from there on in, every time we went to a session to record, they told me ahead of time what the goal was, what the direction was, why they're doing this, and I was able to push back and correct some of those things. So this way it didn't seem like I was some little kid in the basement doing Ouija dolls, smoking pot, hitting the world, because the opposite was true. I loved everything, and this kind of jumped in there. So I understand how that works. So in answer to Jen's question, I accept this is the reality. And I can tell you that I think for the most part, those shows do a positive service, as I mentioned before, in that they help to inform, to entertain, to expand people's vocabulary and horizons. They call attention to historic sites that otherwise fall into ruin. They allow friendships to build around common understandings and events. So although I take a grain of salt in recommending certain shows, a lot of people on the shows I do like a lot. They're good people, and I'm okay with them doing what they do, because in the end, it's a free country. Fair enough?
That is fair enough. And, it's really funny because I like some of the people that get laughed at.
Yes.
And I know better about some of the people that don't get laughed at. So, yeah. And you do too. And it's so interesting to me. Boy, it's dark in here apparently. But I didn't realize that. But I have investigated, now I've investigated in a lot of places around the world, but it's so interesting to me that the people that do investigating, real investigators that are out in buildings and, going through trying to find where that castle was hiding behind that hill, whatever, and, they seem to be working as individuals with the same goals.
Yes.
You want to, because you've experienced it, you don't go seeking it. I've experienced it. I do seek it on occasion because I want to be able to document and understand what happened, what it was that I experienced, why I experienced that. And, it's really funny because the show I was on, I was terrible on that show, but, and that's okay because it's not what I do for a living, but it was so funny because, I pissed off some ghosts in a jail. Okay. And I was obnoxious. But they had been obnoxious first. And so
you're standing your ground.
I did. And, kind of maybe I was obnoxious first. I don't know. It was give and take. But I'm hearing all these sounds.
Fair about it. At least you're fair.
Everything is banging. There's nobody there.
Right.
The cell doors aren't moving. All this stuff is happening. And I'm getting mad because my computer's messing up. I'm trying to do a live broadcast from there. It wouldn't work. So it turned into a big thing. And when they were interested in the jail, the person that owned it said, she had this happen. Why don't you talk to her? And it was funny because this was a show that I thought was Hokum. Right? Because of who was in it. It wasn't Zach. Everybody thinks Zach is full of hokum, but that's not who it was. And they weren't. The producers were amazing. They investigated too, as they were filming. They were part of it. And I've not seen that before. And one of the principals there was sitting in a chair and got poked, was sitting upstairs And I don't know if that's the first time he had ever actually been touched, but he reacted, and it was really obvious that he was tripped out a little
Yeah.
bit. So, it's fun when you can see that happening in like the real time kind of thing.
Yes. Well,
But
that's not unusual, Kat. That's not unusual because if you think about it, the producers, directors, camera people, they're all focusing on what you're saying and what the place is known for, correct? So they're looking for ways to expand on that or to show that or to create that moment. So
yes,
that moment they're actually open to these things. They're listening for sounds they could use. All of a sudden, like they become aware for the first time. Wait, I heard a voice. So even though they're non-believers and they're the crew and not the talent, they sound to become very invested in it initially because they wanted to make a good product for their career, but then they realize, wait a second, this is actually pretty cool.
it's happening. Yes.
Yes.
And that moment of realization, because when the person got touched and knew that they were the only person there, and they weren't doing Estes or anything, I don't think. They were just up there talking. But that butt scooted right out of that seat because it got poked in the behind, scooted right out of that seat and was gone. And I was like, oh, well, there you go. It really is real. But, I think that what you did with your experience, and we're going to get back to some of the other stuff in your experience, if you don't mind, in a second. But I think that what you did through how you shared that, and the way that you and all of your friends that worked with you to do this have had a lot of support through this, through people that love you. And it's really been cool because documenting, and not just the pictures, the notes, everything. And
yes,
when you went to your priest and when you went to, I do want to talk about the Warrens, but and we will, but it's just so interesting to me how you got, because I didn't want to keep talking about other things. So, it was so cool to me how the documentation, which is what sold you this project, but the documentation from the get-go, he was into this, I mean, it was so crazy.
Yeah.
Because what 18-year-old is going to think of that?
I think each of us has our own unique skill set, right? It's one of the things that I kind of like about being human. There are things I don't like about being human, but there's some things that are especially wonderful, which is like the uniqueness and creativity that we have. We can expand people's minds and experiences. And so, growing up, I was very lucky, as you mentioned prior, to have two parents who loved their children, who looked out for their children and tried to raise them to be both successful and, as importantly, kind.
Yes.
And so in doing that, and sometimes we're upset by being so sheltered, My friends go to these giant drug parties, we're home watching the car, But in the end, it was a great choice they made for us because we didn't know any better. And the running helped me to stay out of trouble as well because those was like track meets and college, and running places and big events. So it was great. But when I left my home, I left my base. Everything I knew was back there, and so it's a risk. Sometimes if a dog is chained to a dog house in the yard or in a fence and they get out somehow, they don't know what to do in the world. They rent a cars, they don't know how to really adapt. And so the one risk that I had associated with having such a great childhood, which I would never get for a million years of trade, was I wasn't quite sure it was out there. And fortunately for me, when I got to Erie Hall, not only was Paul there, who was my roommate, who was a very regimented, very clean, very focused individual, and funny too. Jeff was the next door, and Jeff was, except for my father, the most intelligent, creative, thoughtful, kind, giving person I'd ever met. And When I say he opened my mind, I'm not kidding you. He introduced me to the European pop invasion with Eurythmics and Peter Gabriel and David Bowie. Like music was crazy, and he had me listen to the old classics like by Bach and Chopin. He talks about pointillism and impressionism, and well, he's just an incredible person. But the most amazing thing about Jeff was that he could find joy in someone else's accomplishments. It wasn't a contest. Some guys are like, well, you have 4 and I have 5. Some guys are always competing every step of the way. And sometimes when you're an
That's,
athlete, you have to compete,
yeah.
right? Not him. He could honestly enjoy your accomplishments. And so how that happened, that's fascinating. And I thought, that's a good human being right there. So I kind of hitched my friendship to him in that moment, thinking, and for him, he was rather reserved, he was more of a watcher than a doer. He would like his camera wherever he went. He had his notebook, his journal. He couldn't believe it around the house naked at the time. Like, ooh, I was streaking to the college. That's crazy. How do you do, like that? So we're kind of yin and yang, and it worked out very well. When he was younger, he had seen those shows like In Search Of, and That's Incredible Things, and he thought that's really cool. Learning boy narrating, and he just wanted to know, are there vampires and Sasquatch and UFOs? And as they get older, in his teen years, he thought, I don't really see that though. It's not like it's real. And he kind of just despondent, like, darn, they're like fairy tales, like the Easter Bunny. That's terrible. Like, oh well, whatever, childhood dreams. And then when I came running into the room, and I'm like, there's a ghost. He's what? I mean, I think that it's what he always wanted to prove. There's something more than going to work and punching a clock, eating your lunch, going home, punching the clock, and going to sleep. And I think that he was just, as a human being, enthralled with the concept that there'd be something out there beyond the mundane. And so I think he was actually drawn to my experience. I think that when he was journaling these things, he did so not just out of obedience to a friendship, which is part of it, but I think part of him was nourished by these possibilities of spirituality, of life beyond death. And so he played a key role in preserving, recording, analyzing all the things that were happening in that day. And likewise, Linda, who you see in the Netflix show, Beth, who's in the sci-fi show years ago, likewise, they really thought we're good people, Beth and Linda, Jeff and I, and they always try to make us happy. And, they'd be at parties and things. They always included us in these social events. And I was very thankful for that. So when things got crazy and I became the ghost boy, people began to pull away because what they perceived was me being different now. They stayed as my friends. Those are truly true friendships, and it allowed all of us, I think, to navigate with the friendships through a horrible time, because it's like what's that term? Like a blood brother. We suffered so much together that we became a family. We were bonded by our experience, and nothing can really, you can have waves in a friendship, ups and downs in a friendship. Nothing destroys those friendships because they go beyond any single moment or thing. So yes, I'm very lucky. We're all very lucky to have had the friendships that we had. And the cool thing about the Netflix show is that they focused on friends and family. It wasn't just about me and Jeff running around getting evidence. You heard Linda's backstory,
nice.
and right, and all these things. And I thought that was fascinating. And that came about because every show looks for a direction. What's the main point? Initially, they're going to have it very evidence-based, a lot of music, like almost like chronology. And then they saw the friendships. Oh my God, it's 40 years, they're still friends. They talk so naturally. This is not a show. It's real, and they're bonded for life. And they thought there was a movie called Stand By Me. Dun, dun, dun,
Yes.
dun, where the young kids walking the railroad tracks looking for a body, written by Stephen King. And even though they find the body, it's not about that. It's about their experience on that train track, on that path to that goal, and how they became friends. And so kudos to Mark Lewis and to Simon Mills and Kelly Milbank, and Wilson McLean, to Mark Atria, to those people who helped navigate that production towards the friendships. Because at the end of the day, as they say nowadays, Kat, you could debate evidence until the cows come home if you still have any cows in the yard. But the one thing you can't debate is the value of friendship that lasts and endures.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And I'm going to say that's very poignant to me, because I don't have a lot of people that I was young with. Because parents divorcing, mobile, all the stuff. And the most important one from that period died recently.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And so that was that was my big, holy crap moment, right? And it wasn't a good death. It was not a good death. But his faith was always going to be strong through that. So, but it's so grounding. It's oh, hi Victoria. But it's so grounding to have that, and the parents that you had, and your whole family that you had.
It wasn't me though, Kat, right? That's just circumstance. I could have been born to a single mom trying to fight her way through 3 jobs. So I got lucky in this case, right? That I had the background I had, because when I got unlucky with the ghost, it kind of bounced out.
But you were not unlucky with the ghost, because the reason you could cope with it as well as you did was because of the base that you had.
Yes.
And that included family, that included friends, that included, the fact that you were really fast, you could run away. But the fact that there were so many people vested in caring for and loving you, that I'm sure that offered a degree of protection, even though you didn't feel like it did at the time.
Well, I can't understand it, but I'm grateful for it. Even when I had the cancer, the eye cancer this past June, that was a scary time. I had some blurred vision, and I thought, well, probably allergies. I'll just go to the doctors and not be my normal self and just wait through it for 10 years, And I went, and they discovered that I had this carcinomatous malignant tumor in my retina, and that was scary, And so they said, if the tumor has leaked out into your brain or your liver, then you're on the clock, basically. So I had my will made up and notarized and things like that. And it was a scary time, and went down to Sloan Kettering in Manhattan, and they inserted a disc, a gold disc with silver pellets on it, radiated pellets. And they pulled my eye out of the way, and they put it back in there, and they put the eye back on top of it. Gross stuff. And then they burned out with this radiation, this focused radiation, the lesion from my retina. I was quarantined. I couldn't be around anybody for more than 15 minutes. I remember to ask the doctor, I'm like, so if no one could be near me because they'll die because of the radiation, but it's in my body. Question, is that good? And she said, well, she laughed.
To have radioactive iodine because of the thyroid. I know exactly that.
Right, like, hello. So she goes, no, it's focused out of your eye. That's why it comes out. I'm like, okay, I'll take your word for that. But when I was in there, I was quarantined, just like in The Haunting. During The Haunting, because I was afraid of people getting hurt by things, because of my back scratches, I'd be in that room for days at a time by myself, watching the world go on around me, and people playing Frisbee and playing their boom boxes. Let's hear it for the book. And I thought, this is horrible. But it prepared me later on for this moment again, where once again, I'm apart from the world, looking at the lights outside the window. I see Manhattan and the Chrysler Building and Citi Field. It's beautiful, but here I am, like, dying inside alone, And people said prayers for me. Hundreds of people reached out and said, we love you. We got your back. You're a good person. I couldn't believe it, Kat. It was so, and I could feel the warmth. It sounds so silly. The warmth of the prayers and the kindness and the energy. And it really got me through. So I thought, even if I'm going now, my time has come, at least I know I was loved, whether I deserved it or not. And it felt so, so good. And that really taught me, try to appreciate every single day you have. And, unless you choose not to be, someone will always love you. And so I think that, again, from the base I had as a child to my friends in college, to even now, people somehow find value in this silly guy, I'm very grateful.
You've got a lot of value, my friend. I mean, seriously. One of the things that we have another question, but one of the things that I've always liked about you is the fact that when you put out your book, when you were talking about, starting to speak about it once, and when we got to meet and got to know each other.
Yeah.
You never went down the woe is me path. Ever. You didn't do it with your eye.
No.
You were scared with your eye because I didn't say a lot, but I watched a lot. So I don't really, I pray a lot and I watch a lot. But, one of the things that I'm grateful for is that you're so blessed. You're so blessed with love. You're so blessed with courage. You're so blessed with an ability to survive and a will to survive. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just interesting to me that you are always the person that you are. I have not seen you even exasperated, be less than. So
I get grumpy older now. I get grumpy sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. But, yes, I have. I've seen it once. But now Victoria has a question that she wants to know. And it's Victoria Monday, by the way.
Yes.
Do you ever have more paranormal experiences?
Yes. It's one of the things that Lorraine Warren inferred or implied. He said, like attracts like, that, once you experience something, probably gonna happen again. In fact, Father Charlie said, this goes attracted to you. You must have some kind of gift. It's likely this thing happen again. I'm like, again? So when I started to actually talk to people about these things, I said, well, your light is on, my friend, and it's going to stay on. So you're going to keep on attracting things, whether you like it or not. And so that has been the case. In fact, just 3 months after the haunting at Geneseo ended in Erie Hall, my family and I went down to Virginia Beach to go on a little family vacation. The beach is wonderful, by the way. It's beautiful down there. And there's a place called Colonial Williamsburg. It's a historic recreation. And right before then, President Reagan, Prime Minister Thatcher, President Mitterrand of France, a bunch of people had met there, the G8, I think it was called. And my mom said, you like history, let's go take a picture where they stood. And so, of course, we went to this restricted sites building, and I stood by the table where they stood, and I did my geez face, As I'm standing there, my mom has her 110 camera, trying to line it up with her finger in the way. I hear these grandfather clocks start to strike 3 times. Bong, bong, bong. I think it's 11 o'clock in the morning, I think that's bizarre. I mean, when the kids work that didn't set the clock properly, I'm thinking to myself, right? How high school kids are. And then I hear this scream. I see this woman run past me on fire, ah! So in the picture, I'm like, but unlike today, we have cell phones, you can check and see what it is, and retake it and touch it. Back then, you sent it away for 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 4x6s back. That's how it was. From Rhode Island, you sent them to. So we got the pictures back. I don't know, maybe a month later. My mom said, "Oh my gosh, look at this picture of you at that place." You can see there are these clock faces, white, misty clock faces, all at 3 o'clock, floating in the air around me. And there's a woman on fire who's going to be passing through. And so for the second time, after the ghost picture in college in the same year, here we go again. And so I knew then it's just not going to stop unless I tried to stop it. And so because the reactions to me were so strong that I seemed to have this such a strong inherent gift for this, but didn't want it, I repressed it. I was that 6'5" guy who doesn't play basketball. I was that girl who could draw in art class who won't draw. That was me because I didn't know how to control it. When I did do it, people noticed and the expectations on me. What's my aura? Predict the future. What does this mean in the Bible? I mean, people looked to me. I had such an incredible gift that they depended on me for these answers I couldn't answer for them. I felt uncomfortable. With Lorraine Warren, for example, that was bizarre. They gave us a wonderful lecture. They had these slides, which is, if you're a younger audience, it's still black and white photos, right? Advance, you push the button. They had these things they called EVPs. I'd never heard that word before, phrase it, electronic voice phenomena. And they played these things for this huge audience of hundreds of people. I just went because Jeff said I should go and it was free. And in fact, I have the poster from their lecture right there that Jeff showed to me, the dining hall table at college right there from 1984. In any event, so he went, and then at the end, Ed said, "Come up, meet Lorraine, say hello." And Jeff was like, "That's incredible. Let's go meet Lorraine." Just like you see in the Netflix show, you know. And I didn't know. I'm like, I'll be polite. And Jeff pushed me ahead of him, so I have to go first. I thought maybe to give him more time to ask his questions, you know, get him in line. So I got to the stage, and she said, "I will not shake your hand." And I looked behind me like, who's she talking to? Who's misbehaving? You know, was my friends at college just being a moron? It was me. I couldn't understand it. And then she said, and this is not in the show, "I won't shake your hand. I don't want to know my future." I thought, what? And then Ed put his hands on me and pushed me off the stage. And that's how that transpired. I thought, what? It was only 33 years
That
later.
was the weirdest thing.
Yes. Well,
I mean, that was the weirdest thing. And how would she not know her own future when you were going to show it to her?
well, I don't know. So I had no idea. All I know is that to her, I was
It's so
probably a bad
weird.
person. Maybe I was evil. Maybe I something wrong with me. I don't know. I was
Not even.
I was so sad by it and so hurt emotionally because they're famous people and I'm some nobody and they threw me off the stage with all my friends that I didn't go on. They went on an investigation across the campus after that, and I didn't go because didn't want to be around them because I was embarrassed, you know. And
Yeah.
anyway,
I
so
would have been. I mean, I get that.
well,
If you're a
33 years
kid.
later, 33 years later, I'm at this event and a woman comes up to me, very nice, pretty woman comes up to me and she says, "Hi, you're the ghost boy. You're Chris, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the man. I was the ghost boy." She goes, "My mom loves you." I'm like, "Oh, who's your mom?" She goes, "Lorraine." I'm like, "Lorraine who?" "Lorraine Warren. I'm Judy. Nice to meet you." I'm like, so I said, "I'm very honored by that. Thank you so much, but you have the wrong Chris." It's another Chris.
She did not like me.
Let me tell you what actually happened when I met your mom and dad. And she laughed. She goes, "I know about that." So here's the backstory. And sometimes, you know, even we're smart, we're educated, we try to be observant. We don't always know everything. One of the reasons
Yeah.
relationships fail, things like that, which makes our own feels. So Judy didn't like scary stuff, much like me. And her parents were constantly going from college to college to college, touring and showing the evidence. So Judy would go along with them and she'd wait in the car and she'd do like crossword puzzles and word searches, things like that, you know. Well, on this one occasion at Geneseo, her mom came back and said, "Oh my gosh, there's this young boy there with the blonde hair. His aura was like outrageous. His aura was so vibrant." She used the word vibrant. I couldn't say anything. I'm trying to read people, the audience, I'm trying to get there, you know, trying to glean things. He totally blocked me. I thought maybe he'd be my future. I don't want that to happen on stage right there. So we had to push him off. He was fascinating. So
That's so cool.
what I took as a horrible insight and an embarrassing, you know, thing, actually, if I stayed around longer, if I had pursued it, I would have found out it was actually that she was so overwhelmed by who or what I might have been. It was actually a compliment, right? But who knew? I had a chance to meet her a few years after that. I declined. At the time, she had advanced Alzheimer's. She wasn't in dementia. She wasn't always coherent. I didn't want to go and see her a second time and scare her again, you know. So I
Right.
figured, out of respect, this was very nice of me, if I have to say for myself. I really wanted to say hello, meet her, and say, but I declined to meet her formally because I don't want to be a burden to her. And so I think looking back, people say, "What's wrong with you?" I think it's the right choice. I really do.
I think you did too. And another aspect that makes that even kinder is that if she reacted to your energy that way when she did not have full-blown Alzheimer's, then
What would happen?
having it would
Yeah.
have been much worse.
I was aware of that. And thanks to her daughter, Judy, for allowing me the opportunity, for making the outreach, for telling me what actually happened. I
Yeah.
know that the Warrens, who were trailblazers unconditionally, have mixed reviews. People have yes or no, they're pro or anti. It's almost like politics.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that my relationship with them in terms of how it affected me during the haunting, following their advice, was very good. My relationship with their son-in-law and with their daughter has been very positive, and I benefited greatly from my experience with them. So that is my own personal experience and lens by which I view it, you know. And for me, I can now tell my grandkids someday. I actually I knew them. It would be pretty cool. So
Yeah. Well, I always, because I know a lot of people that knew them, and I do not know Tony and Judy, but I think that from what I know, um, I would like them. He's kind of gruff from what I understand.
Well,
But he's very direct,
yes,
and I
I
don't have
think
a problem with direct.
you would like meeting them, regardless of politics, policy, or ownership of the museum. And you would like them because, as you said, they're very direct. But you'd like them also, I believe, because they use the same terminology, they have the same viewpoints, and do the same things that Ed Lorraine Warren did. So they're like a link, a physical connection to, what the Warrens were. And if you have if
Okay.
you value what they were, you appreciate that. If someone's the mindset, well, I don't know, I think they made things up and this and that, then if, you probably wouldn't like being near them because they would be perpetrating the same con. But I find them to be very sincere. In fact, I mean, even a kind, smart person like myself with them can be wrong. We all make mistakes. And I think when the spotlight's on you, mistakes are easier to make and they're magnified. One of the reasons I was very scared to go on Netflix is because they can make you say things by editing, make you an absolute fool to 5 million people. And I can't correct that ever again, which is one of the reasons I had that visceral reaction to things not being correct. But I can tell you that Lorraine, when she spoke to you, she didn't make things up. She believed, whether right or wrong, what she was saying was true, and it made for an authentic, meaningful experience. I will never forget that. I knew when you spoke to her, that's what she was telling you. That was her viewpoint, and she stuck with it. And so I appreciate that.
I like people like that too. Kind of, I mean, people get offended sometimes because I'm pretty direct. And I really try to live by, if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all.
Right.
But sometimes you have to. You're put in a position where you're not going to be able to walk away from that.
I understand that, yes. As a parent, I understand that. Yes, as a professional, I do too.
Yes. So I am, and I'm not quiet and shy.
No.
You're kind of sometimes shy.
Yes.
But not for long. But I've never been accused of being a shrinking violet. So it's just one of those things. It's just fun though. I love people. I love to talk to people about paranormal. I love UFOs.
You live life.
But you would be so. I got diagnosed with ADHD, and it's an adult.
I know that.
Well, this is new, right? Because college and loss and everything else just made it go.
Right.
So I have been, because I was always aware of what's around me and stuff. And so now it's just kind of like, oh, behind the little animals kind of thing. If I'm learning how to live with it, because I thought I had Alzheimer's, but I don't. But I thought I did. And I was just like, so I got tested, no markers for Alzheimer's, but everything for ADHD. And the guy said that I probably had it my entire life, and just, old woman things kind of kicked it into gear.
Right.
But I have found that as I learn how to maneuver around that, and poor Carl gets, the brunt of most of it, him and my husband. But it's interesting, and it's kind of enhancing, a lot about me, gifts, some, experiences and whatnot. I try not to focus on that right now because it's very enhanced. Right. But it's so wild. I cannot imagine what Lorraine went through with Alzheimer's, with her talents.
I agree. Yeah, that is something that frightens me as well, because during the haunting, there were times when I couldn't quite tell if I were awake or asleep, if I was seeing or wasn't seeing. There's that one sequence where I'm pulled to the wall in episode 2 that speaks to that. And it's very scary when you're not quite sure if what you're perceiving is the reality that other people have. It's hard to function in that, and it leads to criticism and even dangerous scenarios. What if I think I'm awake but I'm sleeping, or vice versa, you know what I mean? And so I think that Alzheimer's people, it's never a good thing for anyone. And I think it's particularly challenging when someone has abilities or gifts where they're very sensitive or empathic, because that has more stimulus to sort through without the proper lens.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had family members who had Alzheimer's, and that was one thing, because my mother had gifts, and she would, she was able to stay in her nursing care facility. She lived in a retirement home because she liked it. And so when we came to end of life, they let her move into her original apartment. She didn't have to be in the memory care unit anymore. And so it was so bizarre because because as people start to die, they become hyper focused. The Alzheimer's was not there anymore. Wow. She was very aware of, life ending and very frustrated with that. But I found that really interesting too, that the Alzheimer's was just not even a thing anymore. But
yeah, I believe that.
But it's wild how your body and your brain, and that's a whole different tangent. Sorry, but it is interesting because I don't know. I would have liked to have not seen that happen around Lorraine, but I would wonder if she was getting back to being able to focus and to be aware. It's just the things that you don't think about very often, but I mean, she was such a gift. I mean, a lot of people might not always agree on that, but I think she was such a gift because there wouldn't be this field if it hadn't been for them. And
all those things and arrows. Yes.
Yeah. And I love reading their stuff. So it's very educational, the things about them.
Yes.
And
yes,
it's you gotta recognize that talent, that.
Well, yeah, it's tough though, right? Sometimes because sometimes people want you to act a certain way or not say certain things in a relationship or in a family. At first, Ed didn't believe that Lorraine had this ability. He thought that was silly.
Yes.
And then she said, I have it. And then so to prove her point, he would paint sometimes. He'd say, wait, tell you what then, if you find a house that's haunted, let me know. I'll park the car, I'll get my easel out, I'll paint the house. And then when they come out, we'll ask them. So sure enough, she would like that house and they park their car in front of the house and get the easel out, start, what are you guys doing down there? Or painting a house? Can I say, sure, come on down. And then as he painted their house for them, Lorraine asked questions. And he said almost every time there was something in that house. And he began to believe her. And so at that point, I said, she can do these things. And they began speaking very small, like junior high school auditorium, $50 to show up, and from those little moments, they built this huge now franchise, just by pursuing their dreams. So it's kind of cool.
Well, it is cool. And this was in a period where people did not really speak about their gifts as a rule.
Yes. Oh, true. Yes. Very true.
So, I was reading Victoria's comment. She said that she's seen things she could have sworn were real, but they aren't in this dimension. And do you know Victoria Monday? If you
yes,
don't, you should read her. She's a good radio host.
Show with her and Mike Rixiker, I think maybe about 3-4 months ago. Very nice person.
And she says she's seen things that she thought were fake, but they're real. It's the free falling that's scary. Yes.
Well,
that's.
Kat, isn't that every relationship?
It is. From the first time that you start school to the last time that you fall in love,
Right.
It is.
That's the beautiful life right there. They were like this, and
well, she said truth, yes. But where do you? Because I mean, I'm sorry, you and so many people love you, and when you did the first film. And because I remember the premiere and I was so excited and so proud for all of you. That was such a big deal and so much fun for y'all. Did you picture ever being comfortable enough to come out that strongly with your history.
No, not at all. Even my children didn't know for the longest time until I did the sci-fi show what was going on when it's out there. I always knew that this experience meant something beyond me. I didn't know how to be an effective messenger of what happened. Because on paper, it's, well, there's an attack, and there's fear, then there's worry, then there's fright, and it's, who wants to hear just a bunch of negativity? And it wasn't until I realized that surviving something as frightening as that is actually important. That's why I began to realize, people are sometimes ashamed by their past. I get it. But when you go beyond that, it's a beautiful thing. And so what allowed me to actually share was the fact that I could talk about surviving something in the hopes that maybe somebody can benefit from the coping mechanisms or observations that I had. It took a long time for me to trust to share. My friend Phil Casey, I think you met him a couple of times, my wingman there. He had been watching these shows and going to these things for years. He had no idea playing ball with me on Sundays who I was. He's like, "What? That you're the guy? Nobody knew. I'm telling you, nobody knew." So people are upset with me, but I didn't want to blend the two lives. And with my children, I would tell them bedtime stories with stars and unicorns and dragons and mushrooms and all these little castles, but each fairy tale story made up bedtime story was about my experience disguised. So this way they wouldn't be burdened by being my child and being the ghost voice kid and having to fear what happened to me. At the same time, they wouldn't be ignorant of how to problem solve, so they could problem solve those scenarios without being stuck in my own worldview with my past. That was my best I could do as a gift to them, to walk that needle. It wasn't until, as you mentioned, around 2011, 2010 or so, where Mara Tria and Bill Edwards and folks said, you got to do, Carrie Lyon, you really should share these things. And, eventually Tim Shaw has said the same thing, wrote a book about this years ago. And I trusted them. And then we reached out to Jeff, and Jeff got on board, and that rekindled that friendship. And then that seeing the response to that effort was really cool. And when Mara asked me, when all the filming was done for Please Talk With Me, how do you feel? I had one word: relieved. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't have the sole burden of sharing it. I didn't have the sole burden of carrying this. Because even Jeff said, you know what, one time I'm done with this. He went to burn his notes and things, like everybody walked away. And I kind of was carrying this weight, like this rock in my back for, 20 years.
You couldn't walk away.
I couldn't, because it was focused squarely on me. It must have meant something. And all the trauma, I just don't want to forget it and not have it mean something. So then, of course, sci-fi was the first to really put that onto the national scale in 2012. That was pretty cool. There was the Travel Channel was like, whatever. My Horror Story is kind of a quick little, it's a cup of tea. But then the Netflix thing is what put everything out on a global scale, so that in the first week, I think 5.2 million people had seen.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, 9 million people have seen it. So I have people reaching out from Brazil, from the Philippines, from Slovakia every day saying, how are you doing? We love you. So I know that I went from carrying this burden by myself for decades to now someone wake up tomorrow, in Colombia and watch what happened to me. Someone can wake up, in Thailand, or, maybe someplace in Finland and see what happened to this guy and his friends in college. So it is now most likely, aside from the Conjuring movies, probably the most known haunting on the planet. So with that comes a responsibility for me to act in a way best I can to be responsible with the information and to really try to appreciate the connections and foster them. So every email I get, everything on Instagram, on X, on Reddit, I respond to. I sometimes spend an hour and a half on Reddit a night just going, because people on Reddit can get very aggressive. They can get very, it's tough there sometimes. But I have a lot of friends so far, because I walk through, I see where they're coming from, put something in their spot, and I bring them back this way. And I've made a lot of friends who initially were very sarcastic. Oh, that some woman from California, that Chris was weak then and he's weak now. I'm like, hey, I'm right here. I start talking, and people tend to view these shows as jokes, as actors. It's not real. And when they actually understand there's a real person, that we're not actors, this really happened. And what? Which is what James Wan wanted. James Wan wanted to have people understand it's not just actors doing these classic ghost stories. These things happen to people just like you and me. They happen all over
Yes.
the world, and this is what can happen. So I'm very honored. I'm very honored, even though it's a bit overwhelming sometimes, to be in the spot. From going on that bathroom floor thinking I'm dying by myself alone, to now being known around the globe in hopefully a positive way.
I don't think there's any way it could be anything but positive. I mean, you're going to have the few people that are like, ooh, it's all of the devil, but it's not. And some of it may be, but this isn't.
Yeah,
And
well, that's interesting you say
yeah,
that. I noticed, Kat, that people do sometimes good, well-behaved people who live very clean lives do sometimes fear the devil, the idea of the satanic being involved in the paranormal. I've seen it more often than not, probably.
yeah,
I think it's a symptom of not wanting to be pulled into something that might harm them. A lot of times, the Western faiths we talk about the idea of salvation, talk about the idea of
yeah,
faith, right? See without believing without seeing, and things like that. I think that people put their best foot forward, and just like anything else, I mean, alcohol can be fun to have, right? But it can kill you. All these things. So I think they fear being misled by something beyond the pages of the book, and I understand that fear, and I don't argue with them with that. And I tell them, listen, if the way you walk towards your light is your way, embrace it. But allow me to walk my way towards the light, and I would appreciate that. And I get very little blowback after that.
yes. Well, there's not really much to say after that.
Right. I hope not.
I mean, because we all have beliefs, we all have faith in whatever we believe in.
Yeah.
And you cannot, if somebody is embedded in, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad embedding.
No.
Embedded in their truth, then that's their truth. And it would be very presumptuous to make that be less than for them.
Yeah, right. Because we don't know where they've been. And well, Paul, my roommate Paul, I mentioned before, my first roommate, he
Mhm.
was agnostic. He did not believe in some spirit in the sky. He thought that religion was very constraining and it wasn't worth having. It constrained your freedoms and your fun. And he was very anti-religion to the point of speaking out about it often. And even being
Right.
angry at me for going to church once in a while. But when that thing was in the room, it wasn't me and it wasn't Jeff. It wasn't Bethany. It
Yeah.
was Paul who said, let's get a priest. So again, it just shows you that sometimes we react to our own fears in ways that aren't healthy until we have no choice but to face those fears. So I admire him for that. I admire Paul for going directly against what he strongly wanted to believe in, and to do something that would help all of his friends and himself. So kudos to Paul.
Well, I had forgotten that. But that's very it's been a while since I read this first one, right? But I just find it fascinating because I was so surprised by how little the priest did to help you
Oh,
initially.
okay. Well, it's probably worse than you think, and let me explain that. In the movies, they always go to some big, giant, picturesque church, and the priest opens the door, and he's like 7 feet tall, with a shock of white hair, and he's like, "In the
Yes.
name of," it's like, "Yeah, get him, Jesus," kind of thing. That's what movies are, right? We went to the morning after all those crazy things happened with the ghost being in the room and things being torn apart. We walked up early in the morning, must have been 7 in the morning, freezing cold, our hair was like this. And we went to the Catholic church, the Roman Catholic church called St. Mary's up in town. And the priests would not see us. There had been an incident a couple weeks before where some of the college kids stole a communion wafer to prove it wasn't holy, that it was just bread. They stole it. And so there was a thawing between like a relationship between the school kids and the church. It was a bad time. And I think that when we went up there saying it's a ghost, they figured we're trying to trick them again into doing something that would prove that they're frauds for believing this nonsense. It wasn't science. So they didn't want to see us. But a woman who worked at the rectory gave us a small gold piece of paper. I call it my golden ticket. I've got my golden ticket. And on that ticket was written Father Charlie with a phone number. And that was the interfaith center on the college campus. And so that's where we went to go to see Father Charlie there. And when we met him, I was so disappointed. He was like 30. He had a little bit of a pot belly. He was young. It looked like he just came out of Woodstock concert. I'm like, what? What? If I'm a nasty rank runner and Jeff's a genius, if we can't handle this, how is this guy gonna do it? He looks like he's gonna go and sing like, are you
Yes.
going? No, but he was so good. He spent over an hour reading every page of Jeff's notes from start to finish. Start to finish. It actually was Paul and I who brought Jeff's notes with us. And Jeff said, don't lose them. Don't give them to him. We promised we wouldn't. At the end, he looked up, he said, very simply, I believe you. Oh my gosh. I don't want to say anything because to recollect it makes you re-experience it. So the notes were very helpful to have him. And he says, I'm going to help you. I said, thank you so much. I was almost in tears, like, yes. And he said, I have some questions for you. No problem, sir. You guys doing drugs? I was crestfallen.
Fair question.
No. And he said, listen, I'm not accusing you. What these notes say, and I believe something's happening by your looks in your face, your eyes, I mean, something bad's happening to you. But if I don't know what's happening, I can't help you. If you are doing drugs or, crazy things, I don't know, I can't help you. So don't take it personal. So I kind of realized I understand. And then after we went through, there's no this, no that, no smoking this. And he said, okay, I'll come to your room. And he said, I will fix your stereo for you. And I thought, fix our stereo? You listen, what are you talking? He goes, listen, I'm a priest. I can't go to the college and saying I'm doing a big ceremony. It's not permitted on secular grounds. I read in the notes there was a stereo in your room, Paul's stereo, right? I'm going to fix your stereo. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever, right?
Yes.
So then the following weekend, he shows up at night to fix the stereo. They sign him in. He comes up to the room. He says, Jack, if I see this collar, I'm like, yes. It was really like one of those John le Carre spy novels. Like, so at first I'm thinking, this guy's done. He can't do anything. He was brilliant. So I said to him, are you going to exercise the room? Because you don't exercise the room. That's to do a person. Are you possessed? I'm like, no. It's right. So I'm going to do a blessing. And a blessing basically asks the spirit to find rest some other place, makes this room off limits, and it protects you as well. I'm here for you and the thing. I'm like, that is so cool. So anyway, he took this oil and he put it on my forehead in the shape of a cross, like you see the movies. I'm like, whoa. I was so freaked out. I'm like, ugh. And then I've been blessed by a priest before with like oil on my forehead. I was like, what is that about? And then he started reading, and I'm trying to think. I had saved it at one point in time when he read, but it was a prayer for the sick, basically. And he asked that, God, that your servant Christopher, who is a good person, follows your laws, can you please protect him and keep him safe? All these things. We ask in your name it was amazing, the ceremony, and he got done with the ceremony. It wasn't like in the shows where there's like earthquakes and the sun parts, and it's like it was just a nice, beautiful thing. And then he got done. Actually, I forgot one thing. When he walked in the room, he went, "Whoa!" Like, wow, what's going on? So that was pretty cool, I thought. He got done. It got quiet. I looked up at him, and there were no flashing clocks. There were no breezes. There was no voices or shadows. I thought, what? I said, am I going to be okay? And he said, yeah. I did this blessing, and you should be fine now. I said, can I get back in the room? No, only invite him back in. I'm like, that won't happen. So that's how that worked. And the interesting about that is I don't know how it worked. If it was the intent, if the thing knew what the priest was, if it was the holy oil, if it was the prayer, whatever that priest did. I can't tell you the exact, cause and effect. It worked. For the duration of the haunting, it never fully entered the room. You'd feel around the perimeter sometimes like that, you know what I'm saying? But it never like broke things or threw things where it behaved. But it was furious that it had no access to me and it began to attack people after that. So the priest in his way did help. And then when I was trying to figure out with the bathroom scenario, I called the priest for round 2. It wouldn't have worked because there's like 56 rooms in the dorm, and then would go to the gym or go to the music room. So he really wouldn't have been able to bless 1,000 rooms. It wouldn't be fair of him to ask him to do that. And he did say to me, if he'd help, reach out. And I said, I will, but I lied. I didn't want to bother him a second time. He had things to do. So that was more on me. And people criticized my dad. Well, Dad came and he left. My father dropped everything. He made that 5-hour trip in 4 hours. My sister was angry at me. I didn't know her for years. It was her prom night. She had her high school prom. was to bring her to the private forgot and left her there and went to see if I'm okay at this college. I didn't know. That's how serious he took this. And then in the morning he said, change your room. Dr. Lawrence Kessler, professor of psychology, he's the one that guided us, said, here's how you capture these voices. Here's what you use. He gave Jeff the instructions on how to get these as evidence. So all these people actually were helpful and doing their best. But it seemed like in the end that I would have to do something. And I didn't want to do anything to make this end. It seemed as though whatever they did wouldn't matter. But I love the fact, very thankful, that all these adults, professors, parents, priests, were actually willing to lend a hand and to assist. And I'm forever grateful. And you really can't, in a 1 hour sci-fi show or a hour and a half Netflix show all the things that went on in those 90 days.
Well, the fact that, and it always, since we first met, since I first became aware of this, since I first was reading and researching it, I have been so amazed by your experience because I know the person you are now.
Thanks.
And you came through that so well because of all of those people that were helping you and who loved you and were caring for you. And
no doubt.
I just find it so interesting that, like, Jeff and Mara Katria and, when y'all were doing the New York thing.
Yes.
That was, I wasn't sure how you were going to feel once that was done.
Well,
when y'all were doing it.
My friends were there. I mean, you might.
No, but I don't mean that. I just meant I didn't know if it was going to be too much of a flashback kind of a thing.
Oh, no. I always try to avoid the flashbacks, but they will happen. I realize that. And no flashback, trust me, from my experience, is as bad as the real thing. As bad as the memory might be, it's not as bad because I've separated myself from that. I'm out of that. It's behind me. I made it through. In that moment, there was no script. I didn't know that I would. I thought I would for sure die in that place. And that was very unsettling. I was losing my scholarship. I wasn't running anymore. I was failing my classes. It was just, I was being redefined by something I wasn't at all. It was just I will admit, yes, it's a fascinating tale. The experience is so amazing that it almost checks all the boxes you want from a classic historic haunting, right? Got everything from the full-body apparition to the priest. It's like the Warrens. You probably can't do better if you want to make something up. But the fact of the matter was, it was so, pardon my language, damn frightening. Yeah. If you were to say to me, Chris, you have the ability to snap your fingers and go back and make it never happen, would you do it? My answer, in a heartbeat, yes. That's how bad it was. So if people think, oh, he just loves the attention, he just likes to struggle with this thing, no. But I do realize that people go through horrible times worse than mine. People get caught in wars and get their legs blown off. People lose their babies in horrible accidents. I mean, things can be as beautiful as life can be, and often is. Bad things happen. And, so I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that in spite of what my hardship was, I could still fall in love and have a family and a beautiful granddaughter and friends. And for me, this is icing on the cake. And when you mentioned, and I thank you for that, saying I didn't really feel bad for myself when I had the cancer, I kind of joked about it because I thought, well, I'm on second life anyway. It's my second chance anyway. I already had my first one. So this is just bonus time. I always thought since that day and the ghost thing ended, this is bonus time. I don't even deserve it. Yeah. So I didn't want to go. I want to see my granddaughter, at least here, graduate high school and give her a big hug and kiss, saying, Pop loves you. But I recognized that if I lost this fight to the cancer, if God took me, that would be okay. That would be all right because I would still have in my life had achieved so many wonderful things that maybe aren't as fortunate as I was to have happened in the first place. So.
That's beautiful. That really is. That's probably the most beautiful gift that anyone could ever have, is to have that peace with themselves.
Yeah.
Because
I still like being here though. but you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, you're the only pop block I know.
Yeah, but so. I'm okay with others.
How old is she now?
It's only going to be 7 this year in May.
Yes, because Frankie J is 7, and my oldest one now is 11. It's
Wow,
like, really?
that's
How
so
did
cool.
that happen? But
Oh,
and they're so cool.
yes.
But it's I remember the first time that you were sharing pictures of her at your house when she came up. That was the most precious thing. That is
Her dancing and playing. Yeah, she's just an amazing human being. I think one of my favorite memories, if you don't mind me saying as an aside, real quick, I live in a little circle, so it's like close up to traffic, a little circle area. So we'd put her in a little wheelbarrow. The little wheelbarrow in the wagon. I'd pull her around, and she'd look at the thing. There's no cat, tree. She learned her words, little kid.
yeah.
And I remember this one night, it was kind of late, maybe like 6 o'clock, the sun was going down, and she starts going, moo, moo. I'm like, there's no cow, so it's a dog. Woof, woof. He goes, moo. I'm like, no. And she points, it's the moon. She's never seen the moon before in real life, only in cartoons. Like, the moon. I thought, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. The moon's there every night, and I must never look at that because this little kid says, look up there. I'm like, oh, and I got the chills because young people can really put the wonder and awe of life back into you after so many years of grounding it out. So very cool.
That's funny. But it is true. But we have a question from Victoria again. This is a pretty good question. So she always asks good questions.
Yeah.
But if you do have flashback, do you compartmentalize the experiences so it no longer affects you in the present? Can you do that?
I wish I could. I can't. The flashbacks are not controlled. They happen with a sound or a picture or a moment or a song. It's just they're organic, and I don't induce them myself. I never would, but so they happen. And what I try to do is say, okay, this moment right now, the fear that I have, this memory I'm sharing, I'm experiencing again. How can I best share it for my students who might have been abused, who might be homeless, who might not be able to read, who might, be deported tomorrow, who might have a mom or dad who beat them? So I always try to look for ways to take my fear or my experience to apply it, because this and that way, it makes my survival more meaningful beyond just myself. I have a relative right now who's going through cancer, I think for the 3rd time now. And each time it takes a little more out of you. And each time he rings the bell and he's victorious, but each time it's harder, and it creates a moment of doubt sometimes in your torch of hope and optimism, And I just reached out to him and said, listen, I know you'll have doubts and fears. It's okay. I know you're scared. It's okay. But I said, you are a light, and through your actions, you help others all the time. People love you, and they will always, always love you. So if you can't hear God right now, if you're not sure what the future holds, know this, that we love you and we care for you. You have meaning beyond yourself. And that's what I learned from my own walk through these things. And hopefully that thought helps him a little bit to understand that it's okay to be afraid. And no matter what happens, he has value and we love him. So.
That's beautiful.
Sorry about this. So I'm supposed to ghost talk, right? For 85 and Netflix I'm talking about.
No.
But this is what really drives me, though, is the whole ghost experience means very little except to maybe check some boxes in people's list of saying I want to see that one day, other than the fact that how it affects you. Because if we had that experience, walked around and just hurt people with it, or just trying to make a quick buck, it would have done disservice to everybody. So I think I'm thankful, like you mentioned before, my friends and family, people, really, we've all tried to share in a way that helps others. And I'm very thankful for that. So yeah, compartmentalize, Victoria. I wish I could. You will note that I am well spoken, but I'm not that smart. I'm wise. I'm not smart. People are usually smarter than me.
Pretty smart.
I don't know. I'm smart enough to realize I'm not, but I like kindness. I like living. I like people. I like smiles and laughter. And those things help me to get through my doubts and my fears. I really don't have the ability to compartmentalize. Some people are amazing at that. They can be angry and yelling at you, and then walks by, hi. I'm like, they just shift a gear. I'm like, how do they do that? Like if I'm really sad, I'm there for a while. Like after I'm like, "Ugh." Some people just put in the box and go. That's on my sleeve. I'm like, oh, what happened today, Chris? Oh, you saw my sleeve. That's just me.
I am not very good. That's not true. I've gotten good at compartmentalizing. When I was younger, not so much. So, but in fact, I have remarried my husband because growing up is a good thing.
Yes.
But it's really such a gift because the things that you don't realize, um, I'm sure that when you came out of your experience and became a husband and became a dad, I know that you could appreciate more your dad,
Yes.
even as much as you appreciated him before you were one. And I think it's just so surviving anything that's tough makes you a whole new person. Surviving the haunting that you went through makes you a different person.
I respected my
But
dad.
surviving cancer,
Yeah.
I mean,
I respected
that's
him. But now I appreciate him.
which one was scarier, the cancer or the haunting?
The haunting. The cancer affected only me directly. I mean, if I die, I die. And the haunting, my friends were being attacked. There was a young man at the college who killed himself. We don't really share that information, and the parents have to relive every time. But we could have gone into a suicide that took part
Yeah.
in, due to perhaps some of the effects of this haunting. It was just, and now I'm older now. I've lived a nice, decent life so far. Knock on wood. Back then, I was a teenager. I had so much more to lose. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I was sad to have cancer. I didn't want it. I felt bad. I missed my children and my grandchildren and things like that. But I was prepared. If it's okay, when you're a teenager and you haven't even lived your life yet, and your friends are being hurt by something that's supposed to be you can't take care of properly, that's just devastating to your psyche, to your self worth, to your understanding of the world, and any kind of fairness in it. Yeah, I always hope that good would triumph over evil in all cases. And I saw so many cases where it didn't really happen that way, and I didn't want to be another example of that. And thankfully, thank God, I can now be an example of overcoming things that are tough. So, and again, that's because of my friends, my family. I think because me too, a little bit, because I don't want to give up. I really believe that if I can get one more day, it'll get out of this mess. And I think that may be a better marathon runner too, to go 1 mile at a time. So,
That's actually the best way to look at things. There's always going to be, until there's suddenly not, there's always going to be another day, another opportunity. The problem that presents, though, is that you never know when that is.
no.
And, that's why it's like my friend that I mentioned who passed away. It was just the most bizarre thing. And I was lucky that I found out about him being hospitalized. And bless her heart, my friend Lori, who is mentioned in chat earlier, got stuck in a waiting room while I went to go visit him. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to see him again. And I'd known him since I was 4. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's, but how lucky was I that I found out and could be there?
Right. Yeah. I think it's amazing. That's a beautiful thing, Kat. My grandmother passed away almost 4 years ago now. She was 98 years old.
Wow.
Amazing person. And my dad's mom, all my grandparents, I left them so much. I'm so lucky to have grandparents. My gosh. Greatest gift of all, I think. But toward the end, she was unconscious. She didn't really respond. And I was up here in New York and she was down in Florida, and my dad was down with my mom. And I said, "Can I just say goodbye to grandma one more time?" I said, "Well, we'll tell her that." I said, "No, put the phone by her face." Like, "Oh, no, she's not going to." Please, Dad. I just want to see her. So they put the phone by her. And when I was a small child, she'd sing to me. How much is that doggy in the window? Woof, woof, the one with the like that. So I
Yes.
just wanted to sing her that song. Kat, she opened her eyes. She opened her eyes and she looked at me in the phone and squeezed my dad's hand. And I just said to her, Grandma, I love you so much. You're
Oh
the
my
best
gosh.
grandma ever. Thank you for everything you did for me. I will always love you. You're wonderful. I love you. And then, I went and she was gone shortly after that. But I will never forget that moment and the opportunity that I had to, as sad as it was, to say goodbye. Because I know she knew. I was speaking from my heart, and I know she knew in that moment of scary. It's gotta be scary in that moment, I think, when you know, okay, this is the end, that somebody still says, "I got you, I love you." There's that human, and so I'm hoping, just like I did with the ghost just before, I helped her find some rest because God knows she deserved it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I'm a firm believer that when you're not here, you're in a better place.
I hope so.
And
So
well, I don't think this is it.
right, no, me either.
I mean, because with what we've experienced, what I do, um, I like investigating,
Yes,
and probably you've had enough of them, so I get that. But because I'm always curious, and I'm I always feel like even if sometimes the spirits aren't the nicest people in the world, I still feel like I like the validation that there is something else.
you're in a blessed
Yeah.
place. You're in a blessed place, Kat. You really are because you're looking for some positivity, some truth, some hope, something beyond. I think it's the healthiest place to be in for any human being to look beyond the self and try to find answers. I'm afraid to find out more. I don't have
Well, you
that
didn't have to, after what you went through, I
I don't
wouldn't be
have
seeking
that
back.
classical, but even beyond that, I don't have that classical faith. Faith means you believe without seeing. But I saw after death every single day, hour upon hour, for weeks and for months. I saw
Exactly.
it was a fact. I don't have to believe that there's life or death. I know that there is. So
Mhm.
therefore, I don't have that classical faith that saying is I don't have that. And what I did see of the afterlife wasn't harps. It wasn't cherubs. It wasn't sunlight. It was like this, but more magnified. The suffering was greater, the intensity was greater, the time was endless. That's why I was hoping that wherever that thing was, it was one of many places to go to, but I don't know what that means. So for me, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty of it, if I'm being blatantly honest, I never usually do this. I'm afraid to know more because I'm afraid if what I saw in that moment is what is, and I have to hope my faith is that what I did see isn't the only answer. That's why I'm scared to investigate
Right.
sometime. Is that fair?
Fair. I think that the the people that I have experienced after life are people that are still at work. Okay. Not where I want to be.
Right.
But there's well, and in that jail because I made a whole jail mad
Right.
and doors were banging. They weren't moving, but they were banging and there was stuff and there was voices and it was dramatic. But it was everybody that I've seen are still tied to a place,
Yes.
kind of like yours was,
Yep.
you know. And out of all the times that you experienced him, did you ever experience him out of your dorm?
Yes. Oh, yes. After the busing, um, I went to the library. He was in the library, and I had these books down off the shelf. I was afraid to shower in the shower in our dorm, the small bathroom after the attacks. I'd go to the large, it's a group or gang showers at the college gym, and he'd be there looking into the showers. And one kid says, "Oh my God, there's somebody watching you in the showers." but I don't want to tell him it was a ghost. You know what I'm saying? Because like it would have freaked him out. And I don't want to draw him these things. So yeah, all over the place he'd go and just try to get me to talk to him. And it's kind of like when you're in second or third grade and you get a note, it's folded up, and you open it, it says, I like you, you like me, circle one, yes or no, kind of thing.
Yes.
But I couldn't go home from school. I couldn't, we were just little kids. And it just, you mentioned, we talked about running real fast. I ran real fast. This thing would always like watch me. And especially if I got undressed, he'd like look at my legs. I thought, that's freaky. I was even like a figure model for art class. I didn't care about being naked. But when this thing looked at me, I felt different, like really weird, and I cover up, and then I realized, he was caught and tortured because he didn't run fast enough. If he ran faster, he would have lived. I think in his mind, all those years and years and years gone by, he thought, that's my answer. If I can take his body and go, I'm free of this pain, I'm free of this eternal suffering. I need him to help me with this. I think he was confused, so I really think he was so desperate that that's one of the reasons he thought that, he was gonna interact with me beyond even the familiar relationship. So again, it's so fascinating to think how people view things. Even a dog or a cat, your pet, who you love as part of the family, can scratch or bite you if they're scared or hurt. I mean, people, when they break up, can be so vicious sometimes, right? So
Yes.
vicious because they know how to hurt you. And I think this thing, for the first time in hundreds of years, saw somebody who could hear him, relate to him, who had the skill he needed to escape his fate, who ran by where it happened every single week, whose ancestors found his body and buried him. I think for him, it was no brainer. But for me, knowing none of that, it seemed like I was being oppressed and possessed and all these horrible things.
Right.
If you had asked me back then, I'd say it's an evil, vicious spirit. Looking back now, it's a very desperate, sad soul looking for an answer out of its pain.
That's a good take on that. When did you realize that?
About the connections or about the spirit?
About the spirit?
When I talked to him, when the very last time that I saw him, when I decided I would break the blessing and talk to him. And I was so angry at him. My back was still cut up. It wasn't healed all the way yet. I was failing my classes. I was off the cross-country track team. People thought I was crazy. Their reporters coming to talk to me to interview the papers and the radio and things. It was horrible. And I decided that's it. My friends have been knocked on the ground, knocked unconscious, Beth, and hurt. And I decided Craig told me to talk to it, so I did. And I wanted to yell and scream. And when I saw its eyes, I've never seen eyes as sad as those. And I was angry at myself for not maintaining my anger, but I couldn't help but see the suffering. And the suffering was so ridiculous that I couldn't help but feel compassion for this thing that I hated so much, that I wanted to hate. And I said, where are you from? And he said, Danville, wherever that was, I don't know. And I said, why are you here? Why are you here? He goes, I made a mistake. So much pain. And so when you hear words like that, and it wasn't lost on me, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm talking to a dead person. I'm actually talking to them. I mean, like communicating. It's right in front of me. Isn't that impossible? I mean, so I knew in the back of my head, this is an amazing moment. But
with no tools.
I was scared because like this thing would attack me. And I finally said, listen, you want my help. You keep calling my name. I know how to help you, but I knew one thing. You can't stay here. The longest number of people are going to get hurt. It's not the answer. If you want my help, I'll give you this piece of advice. You have to find rest. You can't stay here. You have to believe that whatever you did wrong, you're forgiven, that someone still loves you. I'm going to count to 10. The night I first saw you in that room, when I opened my eyes, you cannot be here. And I counted that slow count. 1001, 1002, 1000. I got to 10 with my eyes and he was gone. And I never saw him again. I didn't tell anyone what had happened for a couple of days, because who knows if it would last for 10 minutes or not. But after a few days, there's no sign of him, and there are no more activities happening, no more attacks. And Jeff said to me, hey, it's got quiet. What happened to the ghost? And I explained to him what I had done. And then Jeff wrote about the day that the ghost boy had put the spirit to rest. And that's how the whole story went all through Western New York for 40, 50 years until these days now. That's how it ended. So I remember saying to myself, God, you have to be omnipotent. You got the wrong guy this time. Sorry about that. But yet somehow he was right. And by luck, I was able to help this poor thing.
Somehow he was right.
Yeah, here we go
Best
again.
famous last words, dude.
Yep. I think he was right again.
Now, we've got about 5 minutes. Do you want to tell people about the interviews that you're doing and the publications that they can find your story in?
Oh, it's been really cool. I've been interviewed by People Magazine and Forbes Magazine and the Wall Street Journal. It's been quite an amazing journey, that the exposure that Netflix can give to you. You know, I'm just so honored. I'm back this year out on the tour this year, going around all different places to meet people and speak. It's like the old days. I'm looking forward to it. I've not really been showing this. I have my final book. It's called The Ghost Boy of Erie Hall, and this is a picture of me at the toga party. This is the last. I saw that thing at the window about half hour later. It's just my last moment of happiness on the planet without being bothered by the experience of the ghost. I started the book with this, and it's 400 pages. It's double.
It's a great book, by the way.
What's that?
It's a great book, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It's double what you saw on Survivor Evidence. I'm very proud of it. I have backstories on the priests and things. So if you want to know more about what actually happened, it's right there. It's in hardcover, softcover, Kindle, and audio book. Anyway, so that's nice for me, because then when I kick off and go find my rewards, it still stays behind. People can see what actually happened for sure. My favorite thing about the Netflix show is that my father's in it. My dad is 82 years old. I just wanted to make him proud of me. And in the show, you hear him say he's proud of me as a son. So I can put that show on every day for the rest of my life and see his face and hear his voice, even if he's gone, and know that's my connection. And I'm very proud. And if anybody wants,
perfect.
Isn't that cool? And if anyone wants to reach out to me,
that's the best part.
I think for me it is, because it was worth doing. Like that part alone makes it worth it, because I've always fought hard to get his approval. And I'm on my Instagram and Facebook and X and Reddit and things like that. But I always like talking to people. But most I like doing this, like talking with people like you, Kat, on the podcast, and just reaching out to folks and just sharing what happened and lessons I learned. And I really want to thank you. I still have in my other room, I have the white framed picture you gave me of the seagulls that from what is it, 9 years ago now? No, 11 years ago now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy.
Been a while. Crazy. Well, thank you so much for giving me all this time. And Victoria said, what a great interview, Kat and Chris. Well, Chris.
That's you. That's you.
So she's so awesome. And Lori said, great show too. But I appreciate you so much. And I hope that I run into you. Are you going to the Battlefield Bash?
Yes.
I'm going to try to. I was going to come last year and I couldn't. But I'm not very good at those. But, mine are not very pretty. Oh, there we go.
You have a fun time. You always do.
I love there. That's my favorite. Well, it is my favorite because it's so homey.
Yes.
And I like what it's for. So.
Yeah, good people on that for a great cause. The Wounded Warriors, yes.
So I just think, and kids with cancer, I mean,
Yes.
And Vince, thank you so much. I'm glad you were here. So I do this every Wednesday and Sunday. Sunday's a Freight Magazine. So magazine radio. But I really value you so much. Thank you for being here.
Same.
And say hey to everybody I don't get to see.
Will do.
And give Mara Katria a hug when you see her. So
understood.
I think she's so special. So, but anyway, thank you so much, everybody listening. Big hand when I do that. But anyway, that was different. But thank you. I appreciate every one of you. And we will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Good night.